What would you do if your fairy tale marriage was built on a lie? That's not just a rhetorical question. That's a very real one. And for Prince Harry, yes, that Prince Harry, it's a question he may have never expected to ask himself until everything started to unravel. Because today, we're not just talking about royal drama. We're talking about betrayal. Publicly, brutally, and worst of all, unexpectedly. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Because just hours ago, Prince Harry walked into a room full of flashing cameras, stone-faced reporters, and tense royal aides, and made a statement no one, not even his fiercest critics, ever saw coming. And in that moment, the world stopped. Not because Harry was announcing a new charity, not because he and Meghan were planning a film premiere, but because the man who once fought tooth and nail to protect his wife from the press, who once challenged the institution that shaped his entire life, was now publicly, deliberately, stepping away from her. No warning, no spin, no Meghan by his side. Why? Well, according to sources close to the Duke of Sussex, he discovered something shocking, something that shook him to the core. And while the palace may be keeping tight-lipped, the whispers have already started. Is Meghan Markle a cheat? Now, before we even entertain that question, let's rewind the tape. Because to understand why this moment is so seismic, to grasp the full emotional and political weight of it, we need to remember what Harry and Meghan represented. Not just to the royal family, but to the world. They were the rebels of the monarchy, the young, glamorous couple who said no to protocol and yes to passion. They married for love, broke away from the firm, and declared their independence from the gilded cage of Buckingham Palace. They spoke about mental health, racism, trauma. They were praised, vilified, adored, attacked. And yet, despite all the drama, despite all the press wars and lawsuits and Oprah interviews, they stayed together. Until now. Now, something has cracked. Because in the world of royalty, you don't just make a huge announcement casually. Especially not one this personal, this specific. And let's be very clear, this isn't some PR stunt. This isn't a Netflix teaser or a new memoir reveal. This is raw, unfiltered, and by all accounts, real. So what did Harry say? What did he reveal? And more importantly, what didn't he say? Let's walk through the press room, frame by frame. Reporters described the air as heavy, almost suffocating. Cameras rolled. Flashes popped. Aides whispered nervously near the back wall. And then, Harry appeared. Alone. He stepped up to the podium, took a breath, and began. Some things, he said, are too painful to ignore. That's it. That's how he started. No greeting. No preamble. Just that. Too painful to ignore. The room fell silent. And then he continued. He spoke of broken trust, of private truths now made public. He didn't name names. He didn't point fingers. But the subtext was deafening. And when a reporter dared to ask him directly, "Are you separating from Meghan Markle?" Harry didn't answer. He didn't deny it either. He simply paused, looked down, and said, "I have nothing more to add. Not today." Now imagine that. The man who once went to war with the British tabloids. The man who sued news outlets for publishing private photos of Meghan. The man who stormed out of royal life to protect her, is now the one leaving unanswered questions hanging in the air. And not just any questions, but the worst kind. The kind that suggests something darker. Something personal. Something intimate. Was Meghan unfaithful? Did Harry find out? Was there a cover-up? At this point, every major news outlet, from The Guardian to TMZ, is scrambling to piece together timelines, decode body language, and dig through old footage. And honestly, they're not alone. Because for years now, there's been a quiet, but persistent, undercurrent of speculation. Stories of Meghan's solo trips, her late-night outings, her rumored Hollywood meetings, her growing distance from the royal family, and at times, even from Harry himself. But here's the thing. Rumors are just noise until something real breaks through. And today that happened. Because this wasn't just a vague press statement. This wasn't a vague Instagram caption. This was Harry, in front of the world, saying something had gone horribly wrong. And if you were paying attention, you could feel the emotion in every word. Now, let's take a breath. Because it's easy to sensationalize stories like this. It's easy to turn people into villains and victims without context. But that's not what we're doing here. Instead, we're going to unpack it all, fact by fact, moment by moment. We're going to sift through the noise and look at what's real. Who knew what and when? What happened behind those palace gates? And how a royal love story that once captivated the world might be crashing to earth. And before you think this is just about celebrity gossip, pause. Because what's unfolding here isn't just about Harry and Meghan. It's about image, power, betrayal. It's about how far people will go to protect their reputation, their brand, their legacy. And in Meghan's case, it may have gone too far. Because word is, this cheating scandal isn't just personal, it could threaten everything. Their production deals, their royal titles, their public image, their entire post-palace empire. What if it's all unraveling? But here's the twist. Sources say Harry didn't discover this betrayal on his own. He was told by someone very close to Meghan, someone who used to work for her, someone who says they saw things no one else did, someone who claims to have proof. So now we're looking at a possible affair. A royal husband betrayed, a former friend turned whistleblower, and a royal institution watching it all unfold with stony silence. But the most chilling part? No one. Not the palace, not the press, not even Meghan's closest allies, has denied it. In fact, most have gone quiet. Dead quiet. And that, perhaps, is the most telling detail of all. Because silence is often louder than denial. So here's what we're about to uncover. Who this mysterious insider is, and why they're speaking now. The alleged evidence they presented to Harry. Meghan's reaction behind closed doors. The palace's covert maneuvers as the scandal spreads. The Hollywood fallout. Studio deals, friendships, and reputations crumbling. And Harry's final, quiet decision that turned a private heartbreak into global breaking news. But before we dive into the revelations, the recordings, and the stunning betrayals that turned this marriage into a royal nightmare, there's one moment we need to revisit. The press conference. The final seconds. Because after Harry finished speaking, after the cameras began to power down, one reporter, just one, shouted, "Prince Harry, are you saying your wife cheated on you?" Harry stopped, turned slightly, met the reporter's eyes, and then he said 4 words that would send the internet into a frenzy. "She knows the truth." Then he walked away. No smile, no wave, no denial. Just, she knows the truth. But what is the truth? That's what we're about to reveal. And trust me, what comes next will change everything. And no one, not even Meghan herself, saw it coming. She knows the truth. For words. Quietly spoken. But their impact? Devastating. Those 4 syllables detonated like a bomb across media platforms, royal circles, and even inside Meghan's carefully curated inner world. But what did they mean? What truth? And why now? Why now? You'd think we'd seen it all with the Sussexes. The Oprah interview. The Spotify fallout. The Netflix docuseries. Even the back-and-forth book barbs between Harry and the royal family. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared the world for this moment. Because this wasn't a carefully edited TV sit-down or a post-production Netflix scene with soft lighting and dramatic violins. This was real, live, raw, and Harry didn't have a PR handler in sight. Now, take a second and picture the room. Seriously, try to feel it. The lighting is cold, fluorescent, sterile. The carpet beneath the media's feet is thin, worn, generic. There are about 50 reporters, from gossip rags to legacy networks, all fidgeting with recorders and live tweet apps, not knowing what was about to hit them. No one expected a bombshell. Some didn't even expect Harry to show. But then the doors opened, and there he was, alone. No entourage, no Meghan, no security team flanking him. Just Prince Harry, in a charcoal gray suit that looked like it had been ironed in a rush, walking slowly, deliberately, toward a single podium. Not a press stage. A podium. That was the first sign. And when he stepped up, he didn't look left or right. He didn't search for a familiar face in the crowd. His eyes went straight to the teleprompter, and then down. He didn't read a script. He didn't need one. Instead, he looked up again and started speaking. No fanfare, no humor, no royal grace. Just, "Some things," he said, "are too painful to ignore." Right there. That moment. That opening line. That's when the room stopped breathing. Because Harry wasn't there to promote anything. Not a book. Not a foundation. Not a documentary. No talking points. No handlers. Just truth. Or at least his version of it. So what did he say next? Honestly, not much. But that was the point. He spoke in carefully chosen phrases. Not names. Not accusations. Just signals. Signals that something personal had happened. Signals that someone he trusted had broken that trust. Signals that the image of his marriage had been shattered. He used words like misled, misaligned, misunderstood. He talked about sacrifice and consequences and the cost of silence. But he never once said Meghan's name. And that, my friend, was the loudest message of all. Why wouldn't he mention her? Why go vague? Because this wasn't just a press conference. This was a warning shot. And the person he was warning? She was watching. You can bet everything on that. But the plot thickens. Because not everyone in that room was surprised. Some of the reporters, the ones with seasoned instincts, noticed it. The knowing glances. The way the front row seats were half empty. As if certain media contacts had been tipped off but told not to come. Why? Was the palace involved? Was Harry's camp afraid of backlash? Or was someone trying to control the narrative? You see, about 45 minutes before Harry took that podium, there was a strange burst of activity on social media. Cryptic tweets, deleted posts, whispers, a trending hashtag. Hashtag something big. Most people assumed it was about another celebrity breakup or maybe some pop star's leaked single. But no, it was this. And the insiders? They knew something was coming. In fact, one journalist, someone who'd covered the royals for over 2 decades, noticed that several comms officers from Buckingham Palace were suddenly unreachable that morning. Phones off. Meetings canceled. Radio silence. Coincidence? Not likely. Now let's go deeper. Why would Harry do this? Why walk into a press room, unguarded, and make such a deliberately provocative, painful, and career-altering move? Let's follow the timeline. 2 weeks before the press conference, Meghan was seen at a private event in Los Angeles. Not unusual, but she arrived alone. No ring. And when asked about Harry, she simply said, "He's focusing on his own projects right now." Cold. Robotic. Unlike her. The next day, paparazzi spotted Harry at Heathrow. Alone. Dressed down. Boarding a flight to Toronto. Why Toronto? Sources say he met with someone there. Someone who used to work closely with Meghan. Someone who had information. Information about a meeting. A hotel room. A name. And something happened during that trip. Something snapped. Friends close to Harry noticed the shift in tone almost immediately. His phone went dark. He canceled media engagements. He pulled out of 2 charity events. Meghan, meanwhile, kept a low profile, reportedly blindsided by his behavior. Blindsided or nervous? Because what if Harry didn't just hear a rumor? What if he saw something? Now, back to the press conference. There was a moment, midway through, when Harry paused, closed his eyes, and said, "We promise transparency, but not at the cost of our dignity." Think about that. That's not a statement. That's a wound. And then came the question. A woman in the second row, clearly trembling with nerves, raised her hand and asked the one thing everyone else was too afraid to. "Are you separating from Meghan Markle?" Silence. Cameras clicked. Harry looked at her, then looked down. Then, quietly, he said, "I have nothing more to add. Not today. Not no. Not that's false. Just, not today." That silence. That's where the truth lives. And when he turned to leave, the room was frozen. No one moved. No one knew what to say. Until another voice cut through the air. "Prince Harry, are you saying your wife cheated on you?" That was the dagger. Harry stopped. And you know what he said next? "She knows the truth. But here's the thing, we don't. Not yet. Not fully. And that's why we need to dig deeper. Because behind those 4 words is a trail of decisions, secrets, texts, emails, and, allegedly, photos. And the next part of this story? It begins with someone Meghan trusted completely. A friend. A stylist. A shadow figure who'd been there for fittings, private dinners, personal conversations. The kind of person who saw what others didn't. Who heard things whispered between wardrobe changes. Who kept receipts, literal and digital. And that person? She's done being silent. But what she shared with Harry, what she revealed behind closed doors, that's what changed everything. And no one, not even Meghan herself, was prepared for the fallout. She knows the truth. But what truth? That was the question echoing across every media newsroom, WhatsApp group, and palace corridor. It was no longer about what Harry said. It was about what he meant. Because those 4 words didn't just confirm suspicion, They ignited an international manhunt for answers. And the first place everyone looked? Her. The woman who had been by Meghan's side through nearly everything since she entered royal life. The one who helped style her maternity looks, her royal tour wardrobe, her first red carpet after Megxit. She wasn't just a stylist. She was a confidant, a keeper of secrets, a witness to the whispers. Her name? We're withholding it for now. But trust this, in Hollywood circles, in Sussex social media orbit, and among the ex-palace staffers who've grown eerily bold since the Queen's passing, this woman's name is being screamed in private. Because she didn't just suggest Meghan cheated. She provided evidence. And it all began with a message, one Harry never expected to receive. A simple, almost cold DM that slid into his private account, one he used to avoid palace scrutiny and the press. The kind of account only a handful of people knew existed. The message read, "You deserve to know what she's been doing. I saw it myself. I can prove it." Attached, one blurry photograph. Not explicit, not even obviously damning, but enough to shake Harry to his core. It showed Meghan, hair up, oversized coat, sunglasses, exiting a discreet Beverly Hills back entrance. But it wasn't the location that mattered. It was who was with her. A man, not famous, not paparazzi bait. Just someone who clearly wasn't supposed to be there. And more than that, he was holding her hand. Not in a friendly way. In the way you hold someone when you think no one's looking. Harry didn't reply. Not at first. He stared at the message for 2 days. Reread it. Blew it off. Could be old, he told himself. Could be photoshopped. But something about it lodged in his chest. A knot. And it didn't go away. That's when he made the quiet trip to Toronto. To see her. The stylist. And she didn't just confirm the photo. She expanded on it. According to sources close to the situation, she showed Harry text messages, voicemails, calendar entries, hotel check-in timestamps. Enough to draw a timeline. Enough to form a pattern. It wasn't a one-time thing. It wasn't a drunken mistake. It was a series. A series of secret meetings, coordinated locations, alias names, disposable phones, all wrapped up in a haze of PR distractions and charitable photo ops. And here's the kicker. The timeline overlaps with some of Meghan's most high-profile solo appearances. Events where Harry was notably absent. Trips explained as professional obligations. Appearances described as independent engagements. But in the background, something else was going on. Now ask yourself, why would the stylist flip? Why betray Meghan, her former boss and friend? The answer is as old as the royals themselves. Revenge. Whispers say Meghan let her go abruptly. No warning. No severance. Just a cold text that read, "Your services are no longer required." Apparently, it was around the time Meghan signed her brand licensing deal, the one she allegedly kept even Harry in the dark about. But the stylist had leverage. And she kept it. For months, she said nothing. But when she heard Harry was coming to Toronto, she didn't hesitate. She reached out. She wanted to clear her conscience. Or so she claimed. And Harry? He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just listened. For hours. Then he thanked her. And left. Sources say he was never the same after that. When he returned to California, he didn't speak to Meghan for 3 days. They lived under the same roof, but he kept to the guest wing. His phone was locked. His schedule cleared. He stopped posting on their joint social media handles. Their team, some of whom are now anonymously speaking to the press, described the atmosphere in their Montecito mansion as radioactive. And then, on the 4th day, he made the call. Not to Meghan, to his press secretary in London. And that's when it all began. The venue was booked in secret. The media invites were quietly rolled out to a select group. Most of them reporters who had once criticized Harry and Meghan. A deliberate move, it seems. A calculated one. Why? Because Harry didn't want a softball Q&A. He wanted consequences. And make no mistake, this was his move. According to one aide who remains loyal to the palace, Harry declined counsel from both King Charles and Prince William, both of whom, we're told, strongly advised against going public. Camilla allegedly offered to mediate. Even Kate, who has kept a long and diplomatic silence on the Sussex drama, sent a message through private channels urging restraint. But Harry ignored them all. Because this wasn't about the firm. This wasn't even about the media. This was personal. Painfully, publicly, personally personal. And yet, he still never said her name. Which begs the question, is that restraint or strategy? Because by refusing to accuse Meghan directly, Harry did two things. First, he avoided a defamation war that could spiral into mutual legal destruction. Second, he left the court of public opinion wide open. He knows how the media works. He knows people don't need a direct accusation, they just need a breadcrumb trail. And he gave them one. For words, dropped like an explosive tweet. She knows the truth. And now, the entire world is obsessed with uncovering that truth. But here's where it gets even more tangled. As Harry walked out of the press room, visibly shaken, visibly done, Meghan was reportedly on a call with her Netflix production team. Unaware. Still planning promotional content for her upcoming docuseries. And then her assistant entered the room, pale-faced, holding a phone. "It's gone viral," she whispered. The stylist's name was trending. The photo had leaked. And with it, everything began to fall apart. But here's the twist you didn't see coming. The man in the photo? He's not who anyone expected. Not a billionaire. Not a Hollywood A-lister. Not a political insider. He's someone Meghan knew before Harry. Someone from her pre-royal days. And their connection? It goes deeper than friendship. Deeper than flirtation. Their history isn't just romantic. It's complicated. But we'll get to that. Because the next chapter? It's all about him. Who he is. Why he stayed in the shadows. And how Meghan allegedly kept their connection hidden from Harry for years. And once you hear his side of the story, everything you thought you knew about this fairy tale will come crashing down. What happens when the people trained to keep secrets start whispering? You might think the biggest scandals inside the British royal family are leaked by the press, splashed on front pages, or exposed in explosive interviews. But the truth, the real truth, it almost always starts quietly. In corridors, in kitchens, in chauffeured cars with the divider only half up. It starts with a look, a pause, did you hear? And in the weeks before Harry's bombshell press conference, that whisper network was humming. But it didn't start at Buckingham Palace. It started in the shadows of Montecito. Because for all their talk about leaving the firm, Harry and Meghan never really left the system. Staff came and went. PR aides rotated. Assistants, stylists, nannies, private chefs, wellness coaches, they flowed in and out like tides. But some of them had connections. Deep ones. To the palace. To Fleet Street. Even to political insiders. They carried information. And some of them, they carried grudges. The first whisper came from a former aide, a woman who had worked with the Sussexes during the early Netflix era. She was let go quietly after what sources described as a breach of discretion. But that's not how she tells it. According to her, she was made a scapegoat, silenced, threatened with legal action. Her final payment was wired with a confidentiality clause so ironclad it made her feel like she'd joined MI6. And yet she talked, not publicly, but privately, to someone in London, a friend who worked in royal communications. The message she sent? Harry needs to open his eyes. Something's been happening right under his nose. That one message sparked a series of hushed conversations. Zoom calls, midnight texts, deleted signal threads. A web began to spin, one that linked people in the US and the UK across oceans and over fences. And what they shared, it wasn't gossip. It was pattern of inconsistencies, pattern of cover stories, pattern of separation. Let's rewind to a moment most people overlooked. Meghan's solo appearance at a luxury wellness retreat in Santa Barbara last year. It was branded as a restorative reset. Yoga, sound baths, holistic therapy, the kind of thing that screams self-care. But one staffer at the venue noticed something strange. Meghan wasn't alone. She arrived with a man. Not Harry, not a security guard. A man who stayed in a private suite 2 floors above hers. Same check-in window, same departure time. And late at night, they were seen together, walking the grounds, disappearing into the eucalyptus steam dome, together. That report never made it to the press. Why? Because the retreat staff were bound by NDAs. But one disgruntled ex-employee, they started talking. They didn't name the man. They didn't accuse anyone. But their exact words? She wasn't behaving like a married woman. That account made its way to a former royal aide, who passed it to someone in press relations, who flagged it, quietly, for someone very high up. And suddenly, the radar lit up. The palace had remained silent on Harry and Meghan's media antics. The Oprah interview? They endured it. The Netflix digs? They gritted their teeth. The spare memoir? They didn't blink. But whispers of infidelity. That was different. Because that wasn't just a private betrayal. That was a constitutional threat. Let me explain. While Meghan may no longer be a working royal, her connection to the family is permanent. She holds a duchess title. She's the mother of children who are in the direct line of succession. If scandal touches her, it touches the bloodline. And if Harry, the sixth in line, was betrayed publicly, that's not just a tabloid story. That's a royal earthquake. So what did they do? Nothing. Or at least, that's how it looked from the outside. But inside, they activated what's known among insiders as Protocol Eclipse. What is Protocol Eclipse? It's a crisis communication plan originally drafted in the 1990s, after Diana's Panorama interview and the chaos that followed. It's designed for situations where internal family matters risk going nuclear without royal consent. It includes reputation buffers, legal contingencies, and most importantly, information management. And one of the first actions of Protocol Eclipse? Track the Whisper Network. That's when senior aides began collecting statements from household staff. They didn't confront Meghan. They didn't reach out to Harry. Instead, they began building a timeline. Here's what they found. A 2-week window in early spring where Meghan was unreachable to Montecito's staff, allegedly filming a brand feature in Europe, but flight records show no such trip. A canceled couples therapy appointment. Meghan told the therapist Harry was traveling, but he wasn't. He was home, waiting. Staff recalling loud arguments between the couple, often ending with Meghan leaving the property for hours without explanation. A private investigator reportedly hired by a UK tabloid captured photos, never published, of Meghan at a rooftop bar in LA, laughing closely with a man who is yet to be identified. Now pause for a second. What does all this add up to? Individually? Nothing definitive. But as a pattern? It's damning. And you better believe the palace noticed. Because while they said nothing publicly, behind the gates of Clarence House, sources say Queen Camilla was the first to bring it up. We may need to prepare for damage control. King Charles, who had maintained a stoic silence since the Oprah fiasco, reportedly asked to see all comms related to Montecito over the past 3 months. His private secretary began meeting with legal counsel. A memo was drafted. And one phrase allegedly repeated in that memo: reputation hazard, external origin, high volatility. Translation? Meghan. But even as the institution circled its wagons, another group was watching with equal concern. Netflix. Their multi-year, multi-million-dollar deal with the Sussexes is built not just on content, but on brand. And if Meghan was about to be publicly humiliated, that brand value could collapse. So their executives began reaching out, discreetly, to insiders. What did they find? More whispers. Whispers about a man Meghan had been seen with before. A man from her past. A man whose name was almost erased until now. And as Netflix investigators began pulling receipts and cross-referencing locations, one thing became clear. Something had happened. Something that wasn't supposed to. And Harry? He knew. Because according to one assistant, who's since gone dark, Harry confronted Meghan in the middle of the night, days before the press conference. He demanded answers. She denied everything, accused him of falling for jealous lies. But when he showed her the photo, she didn't speak. She didn't cry. She just left the room. And that's when the whispers stopped. Because it wasn't a rumor anymore. It was real. And Harry? He was done being lied to. But the next person to speak? Wouldn't be him. It would be her. The woman who'd been closest to Meghan. The one who claimed to see it all, hear it all, record it all. And when she came forward, she didn't just bring gossip. She brought evidence. Photos, texts, recordings, and one voice memo that, when played for Harry, allegedly made him sit down, bury his head in his hands, and whisper the words. She knows the truth. But what was in that voice memo? What was so shocking, so personal, so damning, that it pushed Harry to take the nuclear route? The answer lies in Chapter 3, because next, we meet the woman who knew too much, and what she shares could be the end of Meghan's carefully built empire. What happens when your closest ally becomes your greatest threat? For Meghan Markle, that's not a metaphor anymore. That's her reality. Because the woman who once zipped her gowns, scheduled her glam teams, and whispered the right things into her ear before major interviews is the same woman who turned over the matchbook that set everything ablaze. And her story? It isn't just sensational. It's intimate. Terrifyingly intimate. But let's start at the beginning. Before she became the whistleblower behind Prince Harry's now legendary press conference, she was just known as Liv, short for Olivia, but always called Liv by Meghan. They met in Toronto, back when Meghan was still filming Suits, still attending casual brunches in oversized coats, still flying under the radar. Liv wasn't a Hollywood stylist. She wasn't even a fashion girl, really. She was a logistics genius, part glam, part fixer, part friend. She handled chaos, protected reputations, and most of all, kept secrets. Lots of them. When Meghan moved to the UK, Liv followed. Not officially, not publicly, but she was always there. She flew into London under aliases. Her hotel bookings were made under Meghan's corporate shell LLC. She was paid in lump sums through a series of consulting contracts. Nothing illegal, just hard to trace. And Liv saw everything. She was there when Meghan's wardrobe was scrutinized by palace staff, when earrings sparked tabloid scandals, when tears fell behind closed doors after that infamous bridesmaid dress fitting involving Princess Charlotte. She even helped craft statements, script responses, filter media angles. If Meghan's brand was a machine, Liv was the oil. So why did she flip? Let's fast forward to mid-2024. Meghan was deep in post-production for her highly anticipated Netflix docudrama, rumored to be a cross between The Crown and The Morning Show. Lavish budget, bold narrative, unapologetically her side of the story, and Liv was in the thick of it. That is, until she wasn't. Because suddenly, quietly, Liv was let go. A generic email. No call. No farewell gift. Just a termination clause. Creative differences, it read. But insiders say it was over something far less creative and far more personal. Liv knew. She had seen too much, heard too much, and one night, she made the mistake of saying too much. In a heated conversation with a junior production coordinator, Liv reportedly let something slip. A name, a location, a story involving Meghan, a luxury spa in Palm Springs, and a man who wasn't Harry. The coordinator, thinking she'd heard gossip, laughed it off. But the next morning, Liv's badge access was revoked. The very next day, her contract was terminated. But here's the catch. Liv had protected herself. From day one, she kept logs, backups, cloud folders. She wasn't trying to take anyone down. She was just covering her own tracks. Because in her world, getting thrown under the bus wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when. And when it happened, she was ready. She packed her things, left California, and did the one thing Meghan never expected. She reached out to Harry. Not directly. That would have triggered red flags. Instead, she contacted someone in his orbit. A childhood friend of his, living in Canada, known for staying off the radar. Through him, she delivered a message. I have something Harry needs to hear. It's about Meghan. It's not a threat. It's the truth. At first, Harry ignored it. But after seeing the photo, the one showing Meghan exiting that Beverly Hills entrance with another man, he reached back out. And the meeting was arranged. Private residence. No phones. No assistants. Just Harry and Liv. They spoke for 5 hours. And during that time, Liv showed him timestamped text messages from Meghan coordinating off-grid meetings. Private calendar entries marked SPA or self, but linked to known rendezvous sites. Photos taken during fittings that accidentally captured messages on Meghan's second phone. Yes, she had one that Harry allegedly didn't know about. And finally, the voice memo. It was short, less than a minute. But according to sources close to Harry, it destroyed him. The memo was recorded unintentionally. Liv had left her voice notes app running during a meeting with Meghan and her legal team. What it captured was Meghan talking about Harry. Not lovingly, not kindly. She was frustrated, cold, dismissive. The quote that broke him, he thinks we're still building something together. But I've already moved on. In my head, I'm out. I just need the right moment. Not we need to talk. Not I love him, but just I'm out. That's the moment Harry sat down. Silent, pale, shattered. And when he finally spoke, all he said was, she knows the truth. The same line he'd later deliver on international television. Now let's zoom out for a moment. What did Liv want? That's the million-dollar question. She didn't ask for money. She didn't ask for protection. She didn't even ask for her job back. According to people close to the situation, she simply wanted the truth known. I watched him give up everything for her, she reportedly said. I couldn't keep watching him live in a lie. But not everyone believes her. Some say Liv was scorned, that she felt entitled to more fame, more control, that she envied Meghan's success and saw a crack in the armor. Others say she feared being caught in a cover-up, that she came forward to avoid being subpoenaed by the press or worse, dragged into a lawsuit. Either way, her information was devastating, because it wasn't just about an affair. It was about intent. Meghan hadn't simply drifted emotionally. She had planned an exit, quietly, cunningly, and all while smiling beside Harry at public events, holding his hand, looking into his eyes. But behind the scenes, she was building another life. And Liv had the blueprints. Emails to a luxury realtor in New York, texts to a PR executive in Dubai about rebranding as a global solo presence, and chillingly, messages to a potential ghostwriter about a memoir that reclaims her narrative from palace fiction and Sussex noise. Not our story, her story. So when Harry stood at that podium, saying some things are too painful to ignore, he wasn't just talking about betrayal. He was talking about erasure. Because Liv didn't just expose an affair. She exposed a plan. A plan to erase Harry from Meghan's next act. And now, that plan has backfired. Because Liv, the woman who knew too much, isn't going anywhere. She's reportedly secured legal representation. She's received media offers from every major network. But so far, she hasn't said a word publicly. Why? Because she says the press doesn't deserve this story. Only Harry does. But Meghan? She's not staying quiet either. Her team is scrambling, crafting responses, drafting statements, preparing for reputational war. Because if Liv goes public, if the voice memo is leaked, if the photos surface, everything Meghan's built, her image, her brand, her future, could go up in flames. And there's one more twist. One more secret Liv has been holding back. Something she didn't show Harry that night. Something she says she'll only reveal if Meghan tries to deny the affair. And what is it? A name. The name of the man Meghan was allegedly seeing. And once it's out, this isn't just going to be a royal scandal. It's going to be a global reckoning. He thought no one recognized him. But someone did. That's the thing about celebrity scandals. Everyone's looking in the wrong direction until it's far too late. While the world was focused on Meghan's wardrobe, her red carpet appearances, her podcast comebacks, and interviews about being misunderstood, she was allegedly slipping away into the arms of someone far from the spotlight. Someone the media overlooked. Someone Harry didn't see coming. Until he did. He wore a baseball cap. Always. That was his thing. Low profile, neutral colors, pulled just low enough to shadow his face, but never so low as to arouse suspicion. He didn't crave attention. He avoided it. And that, perhaps, was part of the appeal. Because the man who stood at Meghan's side in secret was the polar opposite of Prince Harry. No title, no paparazzi, no headlines, no duty, just anonymity. But let's rewind, because the public knows very little about him. And that's by design. We're calling him the man in the masked cap, because, for a long time, that's all anyone had. Grainy surveillance images. A figure half turned away from cameras. A shadow caught leaving side doors and slipping into unmarked SUVs. The internet did what it always does, speculated. Was it a bodyguard? A driver? A business associate? But behind closed doors, Harry found out the truth. And it cut deep. Let's start with how they met. According to sources close to Meghan's former assistant, the man wasn't a stranger. In fact, he was someone from Meghan's pre-royal life. Back when she was still known as Rachel Zane on Suits, filming in Toronto, living in a modest rental house, navigating auditions and brand deals. He was a music executive. Not famous. Not rich, but well-connected. Smart. Charismatic. Someone who knew how to move between celebrity circles without getting sucked into them. The two were linked briefly in gossip blogs in 2015. Just a rumor, nothing confirmed. But Meghan never denied it. And years later, their paths crossed again. At a wellness fundraiser in Los Angeles. The event wasn't high profile. No red carpet. Just a casual rooftop panel with industry folks, wellness influencers, and a few streaming execs. Meghan showed up alone. Harry was in the UK attending a military charity event. According to one of the event's organizers, Meghan and the man reconnected instantly. They weren't flirty. Not openly. But there was a familiarity, like two people picking up a conversation that had only been paused. And from there, it escalated. Quietly, cautiously, calculated. Text messages obtained by a former driver who worked with Meghan's team show late-night pickup requests. Always vague. Pickup, 9:45 p.m. Don't use the main entrance. Destinations marked only by intersection points. Often ending at high-end boutique hotels with discreet underground entrances. And when the driver once asked if he should wait, he was told, bluntly, no need. I'll be a while. That driver has since been let go. And since Harry's announcement, he's been sharing his story with tabloids and podcasts alike. But the most damning evidence didn't come from paparazzi or staffers. It came from security. Because when Harry began to suspect something was off, he didn't hire a private investigator. He didn't dig through Meghan's phone. He did something simpler. He reviewed gate logs. See, despite their apparent departure from the royal machine, Harry and Meghan's Montecito mansion remained under heavy surveillance. Not just for their safety, but due to liability and insurance requirements for high-profile guests. Every person who entered or exited was logged, facially scanned, or manually registered. And in that data, the man's name popped up, multiple times, under a business pretext. Delivery liaison, audio consultant, brand logistics, all fake. When Harry saw the logs, he asked his head of security a simple question. Was I home during any of these visits? The answer? Yes. That's when Harry asked to see the surveillance footage. And there he was, the man in the baseball cap, escorted past cameras, sometimes greeted at the side door by Meghan herself. No hugs, no kisses, but closeness, proximity that, to Harry, looked like betrayal. Still, he didn't react publicly. Not yet, because he needed one more confirmation. So he did something no one saw coming. He reached out to the man directly. Sources say Harry used a burner number, a clean line from his security detail. He sent a single message. I think you know who this is. We need to talk. The man responded. Nothing happened that wasn't already broken. That reply confirmed everything. No denial. No apology. Just justification. And for Harry, that was it. He reportedly threw the phone across the room. The next morning, he called his London press team. But let's talk about why Meghan chose this man. Because this wasn't random. This was intentional. Harry represented the crown, the past, tradition, duty. This man, he represented freedom, simplicity, no pressure, no press. He didn't ask her to play royalty. He let her be the version of herself that existed before the palaces, the protocol, and the relentless judgment. And to Meghan, that might have felt like home. But here's the problem. That version of herself, the private, free one, doesn't exist anymore. Not really. Because no matter how many times she steps away from royal life, Meghan's shadow follows her. And now, thanks to this affair, or emotional entanglement, or secret connection, or whatever her PR team is calling it, that shadow is darker than ever. Because it wasn't just Harry who was betrayed. It was the brand, the image. The empire they built together, book by book, docuseries by docuseries, was founded on unity, resilience, love against the odds. And now, that foundation is cracking. But here's where it gets messy, eh? The man in the masked cap? He's not staying silent anymore. After Harry's press conference, he was approached by several international outlets. Most he ignored. But one, he agreed to speak, off record. And what he said, it changes everything. According to this insider account, the man claims. Meghan told him she was trapped in her marriage. She described Harry as emotionally volatile and stuck in royal trauma. She said she never signed up for a life this boring. And most importantly, she invited him into her life. I didn't chase her, he allegedly said. She reached out to me. If true, that flips the narrative completely. Because it's not just infidelity, it's emotional manipulation. A deliberate move to replace Harry before exiting the partnership. So now the world is asking, was Meghan planning to leave Harry before he found out? Was this relationship with the man in the cap just step one in a larger plan? And what happens next? The answer might lie in Meghan's next move. Because as of now, she's still silent. No statement. No denial. But her team? They're scrambling. Because if the man in the cap decides to go fully public, if he confirms the affair, if he shares his side of the story, the consequences for Meghan will be unlike anything she's faced before. brand deals, at risk, public sympathy, shattered, even her Duchess title, under threat. And Harry? He may be done staying quiet, because while he hasn't named names yet, he's been taking meetings with his legal team, with Netflix executives, and, most shockingly, with palace insiders he once swore never to speak to again. Which means he's gearing up for something bigger, something permanent. And what that is, we'll uncover in the next chapter, because Meghan may have underestimated just how far Harry will go. When the truth is on the line, they said, she screamed, "Don't you dare ruin my contract." Contracts, NDAs, deliverables. In Hollywood, they're more sacred than wedding vows. So when Meghan Markle allegedly found out that Prince Harry was preparing to go public, not with a documentary, not with a book, but with the truth, she didn't cry. She panicked. Because what was at stake wasn't just their relationship. It was a multi-million-dollar empire crafted through cameras, carefully worded captions, and curated vulnerability. And at the heart of that empire, a platform that had once bet big on the Sussex brand, Netflix. Now here's where things get complicated. Because while most people think of Harry and Meghan's Netflix deal as a simple production contract, it's not. It's layered, strategic, structured in phases. And the most important part of it? Reputational leverage. Netflix didn't just invest in two content creators. They invested in a narrative. The underdog royals. The escape from monarchy. The love story against all odds. That story sold. And it worked for a while. Viewership numbers soared. Social media exploded. Meghan became a face of modern womanhood. Harry, a symbol of reformed masculinity. But Netflix was never sentimental. They were transactional. And deep inside their agreement, hidden in footnotes, buried beneath paragraphs of legalese, was a clause that few people outside the industry even knew existed. It was called the Public Integrity Clause. And here's what it meant. If either party, Harry or Meghan, became the subject of an uncontained scandal that could damage the platform's reputation, Netflix had the right to pause, re-edit, or terminate any pending projects. And guess what? That clause had just been activated. Let's back up a few days. After Harry's press conference, calls flooded Netflix headquarters, not just from journalists, but from investors, advertisers, concerned executives asking one question. Are we about to be associated with a cheating scandal? The timing couldn't have been worse. Meghan was preparing to launch the promotional campaign for her new lifestyle docu-series, Reclaimed. Part Goop, part Oprah, part tell-all. It was branded as her redefinition moment. A post-palace pivot that positioned her as a thought leader, not a tabloid regular. But in the shadows, the narrative was collapsing, and Netflix knew they had to act. So they summoned the Sussex team to a crisis call. Virtual. No cameras. No recordings. Just voices, tight, clipped, rehearsed. And the message was clear. We need assurance. Or we need distance. Meghan was livid. According to a source familiar with the meeting, she snapped. Said the cheating claims were false. Baseless. That she would sue any outlet that printed them. That Harry had acted irrationally. That he was struggling emotionally and couldn't be trusted. But the execs? They didn't care about blame. They cared about fallout. Netflix had seen what happened to Spotify. They had watched Archwell Audio flame out, and they weren't about to make the same mistake. So they issued an ultimatum. You either go public with a unified front, or we put your projects on hold. Meghan's reaction? Explosive. Sources say she immediately called Harry, who had gone quiet since the press conference, and demanded a meeting. Not a reconciliation, not an apology, a strategy session. But Harry didn't pick up. His assistant did. And her response was chilling. Prince Harry is unavailable and not interested in discussing branding at this time. That's when the panic set in, because Meghan realized something terrifying. Harry wasn't bluffing. He wasn't staging a PR stunt. He wasn't buying time to cool off. He was done. And if he was done, the foundation of their Netflix empire was done with him. Here's what people don't understand about streaming contracts at that level. They're not just financial. They're personal. Platforms like Netflix bank on personality-driven content. And when the personalities go rogue, so do the dollars. Behind the scenes, Meghan's team scrambled. They hired new PR consultants, aggressive ones. The type who specialize in image rehab after scandal. They drafted emergency statements, blaming media misinformation, citing mental health struggles, even suggesting estrangement from external family members had influenced Harry's behavior. But none of those statements were released. Why? Because Harry still held the nuclear button. He hadn't shared everything at the press conference. He was still holding onto the voice memo, the photo, the gate logs, the second phone, and Meghan knew it. She tried one last time to reach him. She sent a handwritten letter, delivered via a mutual contact. In it, she reportedly wrote, "We built something powerful. Don't burn it down. Let's manage this together." But Harry's response? Another silence. And then, an email. From his legal team. It was short, professional, unmistakable. "We are initiating a review of joint obligations with media partners. All future decisions will be made independently." Translation? We're done. And Netflix? They moved fast. Within 48 hours, Meghan's docu-series was paused for internal review. Executives began discussions with alternative producers. Staff who had signed NDAs were quietly released from exclusivity. The show wasn't canceled yet, but it was wounded. Badly. And that's when the press caught wind. Headlines exploded. Netflix on the fence about Meghan Markle's series. Harry and Meghan rift causes chaos at streaming giant. Sources say royal fallout threatens multi-million-dollar projects. And in the middle of it all, Meghan, alone, the woman who had once captivated the world with a veil, a wave, and a perfectly delivered speech about compassion, was now facing a war she couldn't PR her way out of. Because this time, the threat wasn't a rude royal aide, or a sexist tabloid, or a faceless internet troll. This time, the threat was the man who once would have burned the world down to protect her. Prince Harry, and he was no longer playing the role of doting husband. He was rewriting the script. But what pushed him to go this far? What made him risk their livelihood, their public image, their entire media empire? The answer, according to insiders, is heartbreak. Not just because of an affair, but because he realized he had been used. That's the word that keeps echoing among his close friends. Used. And when that kind of realization hits a man like Harry, who gave up everything for love, it turns pain into purpose. And now, that purpose is crystal clear. To reclaim his voice, even if it means burning everything down. But the most chilling part? He's just getting started. Because while Meghan was trying to save her Netflix deal, Harry was taking meetings in London. Quietly, strategically. And one of those meetings was with someone no one expected. A senior palisade. Which begs the question, is Harry planning to return to the royal fold? Or is he planning something even bigger? Something that could shake the monarchy itself? Because there's one document no one's talked about yet. A private contract. A clause. A fund. Hidden deep in the late Queen's will. And when Harry discovers what's inside it, this story takes a turn no one, not even Meghan, saw coming. "You'll only ever hear my side once. Then I'm gone." That was the first line. Not of a press release. Not of a public apology. But of a voice note, quietly leaked, eerily calm, and heartbreakingly revealing. Because while Harry had already spoken to the world, dropped veiled bombs, and let silence fill the gaps, Meghan was still silent. Weeks had passed since the press conference. Rumors swirled, headlines screamed, public opinion shifted, but through it all, Meghan remained invisible. Until the voice note. And once it surfaced, it became clear she had never planned to speak to the world. She had planned to vanish. But before she did, she needed one person to understand her truth. The note wasn't intended for the public. At least, not at first. It was reportedly sent to a longtime friend, one of the few Meghan had kept after her royal exit. A friend from college. Not famous. Not political. Not media savvy. Just someone who remembered her before the tiaras, the tabloids, and the trauma. The voice note was recorded at 2:08 a.m., and it sounded like it. Her voice was hoarse, strained, exhausted, the kind of voice that only emerges after hours of tears, pacing, arguments. Or all three. She didn't introduce herself. She didn't say hello. She just started speaking. And what she said didn't sound like spin. It sounded like someone unraveling. "Everything's changed," she began, voice cracking slightly. "And I don't know how we got here. Or maybe I do, and I just didn't want to admit it." She paused. Then came the confession. Harry was everything I wanted. At first, he was escape. He was validation. He was chaos, but the kind I needed. But then, I started suffocating. Those words hit hard. Not because they were cruel, but because they were honest. Painfully so. She went on. He thought I needed saving, that I was this fragile creature broken by the media. And maybe I let him think that. But I was never that girl. I don't need saving. I never did. Let that sink in. Because to the public, their relationship had always been framed as a rescue mission. The protective prince and the embattled actress. The white knight and the misunderstood outsider. But according to Meghan, that narrative was fiction. I loved him. I still do, in some warped way, she continued. But I stopped seeing him as my partner. He became a symbol, a brand, a duty, and then, the line that echoed across every social feed. I didn't cheat. At least not in the way people think. I emotionally checked out months before I ever touched someone else. There it was. The emotional infidelity. The blurred lines. The revelation that, in Meghan's mind, the marriage was over long before it broke publicly. But she didn't stop there. She went deeper. She spoke of nights Harry spent awake, pacing the halls, haunted by his mother, gripped by paranoia, fixated on headlines that mentioned her, his obsession with control, his fear that they were coming for her, for him, for their kids, and how, slowly, she started to feel more like his patient than his partner. I lost myself, she whispered. I couldn't breathe without being his cause, his project, his reason for rage. And so, she says, she started looking for space, for silence, for someone who didn't see her as a symbol, but as a woman. And that's when he reappeared. The moment I saw him again, I remembered who I was before all of this. She never named him, but we know who she meant. The man in the masked cap. She described their meetings as refuge. She said they never planned anything, that it just happened, that she needed to feel human again. But even in her confession, there was a strange absence of remorse. I don't regret him. I regret the fallout. I regret not being honest with Harry sooner. That's where the tone shifted. Meghan's voice broke. Truly broke. I thought I could manage everything. Keep the house stable. Keep the brand alive. Keep the kids shielded. I thought I could fix everything before it all exploded. But then she said something unexpected. He found out earlier than I expected. Someone told him. Someone close. I thought I had more time. That line stunned people. Because it suggested planning. Delay. Calculation. She hadn't just drifted. She had managed her exit. Even her heartbreak sounded tactical. I knew I was losing him. But I also knew I couldn't stay in something that made me feel small. Then came the ending. A whispered admission. I'm going away for a while. Don't try to find me. Don't respond to this. Just tell the truth if they ever ask. I wasn't perfect, but I wasn't malicious. Click. End of message. Just 3 minutes and 48 seconds long, but long enough to detonate a second wave of chaos. The palace issued a chilling 5-word response. No more. No less. No comment at this time. In the world of royal press, that phrase is far more than a dismissal. It's a veiled warning. Because when the institution behind centuries of monarchy decides to go silent, it means one of two things. They're buying time to cover something up, or they're preparing for war. And in this case, it was both. The voice note had gone viral. Because while Andrew had been accused of crimes, Meghan had brought something far more volatile into the equation. Public embarrassment of the crown at a global scale. The Queen, for all her steel, had always operated under the mantra, never complain, never explain. But Charles? He was not his mother. And after that voice note leaked, especially the line where Meghan said, I never signed up for a life this boring, a storm began to brew. Because that single sentence was interpreted not as criticism of Harry, but of the institution. A disrespect not just to marriage vows, but to monarchy itself. The problem? Timing. King Charles was weeks away from launching a new Commonwealth initiative. Prince William was preparing for a highly publicized diplomatic tour. And Kate, still recovering from her own health battles, was rumored to be stepping back from public engagements for the season. The last thing the monarchy needed? Another Megxit scandal. But this time, it wasn't about leaving. It was about being removed. Here's how the palace responded, strategically, surgically, and silently. Step 1. Lockdown. All palace staff were issued internal memos banning discussion of the Sussex situation. Emails were flagged. Slack channels were monitored. Personal devices were discouraged from being brought inside meetings. Even long-standing aides were told to go silent. Step 2. Legal audit. King Charles personally ordered a review of Meghan's entitlement to royal patronages, funds, and courtesy usage of HRH styling. Even though she and Harry had previously stepped back, the legal gray area remained. And buried within that audit? A clause tied to conduct unbecoming of royal dignity. It hadn't been invoked in over 70 years. Until now. Step 3. Parliamentary liaison. A senior peer in the House of Lords was contacted privately and asked to begin drafting informal